Hello, everyone. Happy Monday evening. Happy Monday evening, wherever you're tuning in from. My name is Brenda Lormill. I am the founder and the executive director of the Haitian American Medical Association, and I am thrilled to be here another evening talking about mental health, most exclusively stress in our Haitian community. Tonight's panel will be conducted in the English language, and we look forward to our Haitian Creole session on Wednesday night, September 16th, on stress as well. But you are tuning into our conversation on stress in the Haitian American community this evening. Again, my name is Brenda Lormill, and I am totally honored to be the founder of this organization. HAMA started in April 2017 with a small group and has now grown to 26 different volunteers, an amazing board, and 9 different departments to our organization. So things have been great. When I'm not hanging out and planning and meeting with my HAMA team, I can be found at Mass General Hospital Cancer Center. I am the equity nurse practitioner there, and I enjoy my work there and the colleagues that I work with. So tonight, I am so excited to sit back and listen to this conversation on stress in the Haitian community. We have had 2 amazing weeks of conversations around trauma and depression, and tonight we're rolling into stress. And I have the honor to introduce to you guys our moderator, Christina Michelle. She joined HAMA last year, and she's been an amazing addition to our team. I've found a newfound skill that she has with moderating, which is amazing. So, Christina, before I butcher your intro, I'm going to let you gracefully introduce yourself. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you so much, Brenda. And I would like to give a shout out to all of our viewers who are watching us tonight, both on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you for joining us. Tonight we have our third installment of our panel series. We have talked about a variety of topics for the past 2 weeks. And we took a mini break last week due to the holiday. But we are back at it. We have 3 great panelists. But before I would like to formally introduce myself, um, if from like an occupational standpoint, I currently work at Moderna Therapeutics. I currently work at Moderna Therapeutics, and within HAMA, I serve on the fundraising committee. Um, so yeah, that's a little bit about me. Again, we have 3 great panelists. And I will allow them to introduce themselves. I would love to learn a little bit about them, and I hope you all can learn a little bit about them too. Sorry, I was just reading something really quickly. First up, we have Cleona Sylvain.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me as part of the panel today. And I think this is the right time for us to be talking about stress. So I'm very excited to share what I have and to also learn from the amazing people that I'll be sharing this panel with. So I want to thank you again and thank you for some of my friends and family who are listening from here in Massachusetts and Florida. I am a proud mother of 3 and the founder of Sylvan Counseling Services right here in Massachusetts. So I just can't wait to hear what other people have to say about stress tonight.
Thank you so much, Cleona. Next up, we have Marie Celestin. Hello, good evening. Oh, you're on mute. Give us a second. I think Marie is having some technical difficulties. I'm going to pause Marie for a second and move on to Sabrina. Sabrina, Limoz Samdi.
Hi, my name is Sabrina Lamos Samdi. I have a master's degree in social work from Salem State. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology and communication, journalism from Regis since 2013. My concentration in my master's was children and families. Right now, I currently work for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, specifically Department of Children and Family. Um, and I'm recently married. I enjoy traveling and decorating and spending time with my family. I'm open to hearing what the panel has to say for stress and sharing with you guys what I know about stress, and so we can help the Haitian community.
Thank you so much, Sabrina, and congratulations on your recent marriage.
Thank you.
And finally, we have Marie Celestin again. Okay, I'm gonna give Marie.
Thank you for having me. I'm hoping
Oh,
you can
awesome.
hear me.
Yes, yes. Do you mind putting your camera on? If you can't, as of this moment, it's fine. But you can introduce yourself. Do you see the camera button on the bottom center? Okay. I believe we have some technical difficulties, but we are going to start the panel, and then whenever Marie can join, she'll just join us here. Awesome. So we're just going to get right into it, and then hopefully we can have more of an input once Maria joins us. First question that I have, how would you, in your personal opinion, define stress? What does stress mean to you?
I guess I can go. So like stress is like usually a response to like a pressure or a threat. Um, like you might start feeling tense when you have experiencing stress, or you might experience being on the edge or nervous. And then sometimes it might have like a physical effect to you, like your heart is racing. And the adrenaline of stress is also, and then sometimes your body goes into a flight or fight mode. But stress can be good stress too, because sometimes when you're under stress, it can help you rise up to the situation. Um,
Mhm.
and it sometimes some people have expressed they perform better under stress. So I can think of in college, you have a paper due, and you manage to leave it last minute, and somehow the paper is really good. Some people have that gift, and some people can rise up to the occasion with stress.
Mm-hmm.
So stress can be, it depends on, I think, how you manage stress too, as if since there's good stress and bad stress, in terms of like coping with it, would be my definition of stress. For me, I do struggle with stress and managing stress, so it's a ongoing skill that I'm learning, especially with the work that we do. It can become extremely busy, and prioritizing is one of the important skills to have when it comes to managing stress too.
Okay. So just to respond from here, so it is everything, you said, Sabrina. It is the way we respond to whatever the demand is, our body responds to it. So, there's the frustration, there's the anger, nervousness. For a very long time, I didn't think of stress as something negative, which now I kind of see how it could be a negative thing. But I always thought of stress as the most positive thing. And the reason is because I like to make sure things are done. I know if it needs to get done, I need to get involved. I create, this thing for myself. If you want it done, call Cleo. So, because I'm going to get on it, make sure it's done. The positive stress, Sabrina talk about, I see it as like the best thing ever. Because what I do, I try to push myself. I don't always go for the deadline. I go for the deadline. So
Right.
I give myself. So that's how I see positive stress. And I really like to focus on positive stress because that's what gives you that energy to protect yourself from danger or to get things done by the time that you need to get it done.
And just to repeat the question that was said a few moments ago, the question was, how do you personally define stress?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any thoughts to add, Marie?
Sure. So I think for me, I'm always thinking about stress in terms of the mind. So I know it's both physical and emotional because I think a lot of time we see the external effect of stress, but for me, I always define it as both, sort of like the physical, the emotional, and sometimes you can't always see it, but I do believe everything that's going on in our mind has an impact internally and externally. So for me, it's all start in our thoughts in our mind, and then it's sort of like our body reacts to what's happening to us externally and internally.
Awesome. So as a follow-up question, I know there were a couple of physical responses to stress listed. Could you give the viewers any like emotional or psychological um, effects of stress that someone may experience?
I can go. So some of the emotional manifestation that one can see would be something like short-tempered. Sometimes there's the thing that you used to enjoy, and all of a sudden it's a problem. So it could be short-tempered. Feeling sad or lonely. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where the person is in a house full of people, but yet they feel lonely.
Right.
That's one way of displaying it. During this time that we are going through right now, a lot of people are feeling guilt about what's going on, why this happened. So there's a lot of guilt that happens and frustration. So that's one way emotionally stress could display itself.
And then sometimes stress can lead to like other symptoms of other like well-known mental health concerns. Like it can add on to your anxiety. It can also add on to the depression you already have. They can go either or, like one can be the cause of the other. And stress can also impact like your ability to concentrate and just be able to do. It's kind of like a mind fog. You're just in the state of you're here, but you're not here because you just have a tough time concentrating. You're extremely forgetful. And it's just like your present is physically here, but you're not there simply because your thoughts are racing and it's adding to the adrenaline, the pressure, your heart racing, that physical aspect of stress that we talked about is all examples of some of the emotional and mental aspect of stress can add is the mind fog, difficulty concentrating, and then the depression, anxiety is also emotional that it can add.
Yeah, so I agree with you all with all the examples. I mean, there are so many examples sometimes, and it's interesting because people may not even pick up on it, right? So for me, eating is an effect, and to me, it's an emotional effect. So when you stressed out, or something is really weighing you down, we tend to eat certain things, and so each person can really think about, okay, if for me, things are always crunchy, salty, sugary, like it's a mix of like all the flavors, and I'm eating my stress away in terms of it, and it's comforting, right? So to me, it's a way of self-soothing. So when I eat, that food makes me feel better. Um, Other people may do something that's positive. So for example, they may exercise, but they over exercise as a way to escape the stress. And in the emotional part too, you may just start latching out at people, and it may not has anything to do with the people in your environment, but this is your way of coping with that burden that you're dealing with. And so for me, and sometimes it's multiple, like it's not going to be just one. Some people sort of like project everything. So it's not just one or the other. But those are the key, especially now, like we home more. So I can imagine some people just eating, eating the stress away, eating because they're bored, eating because they have so much on their mind. And also there's a lot of fear and uncertainty going on. So we're looking for ways to cope, and we go external. We go for the food in order to sort of like make ourselves feel better.
Mhm.
Interesting points. Ironically, I was scrolling through Facebook one day, a couple of days ago, and I was reading something on high functioning stress. Someone who, may have anxiety, may suffer from anxiety, but they are high function. And what that is someone who um, tends to pick up more, I guess, like beneficial characteristics or characteristics seen as beneficial to society. So with that, my question is, would you suggest someone intentionally put themselves in stressful situations in order to, partake in like these more high functioning characteristics? So
I think
like
sometimes.
finishing your homework on time, like constantly like picking up new activities, being a people pleaser. Would you suggest someone put
Yeah,
themselves in stressful situations?
I think sometimes people sometimes unintentionally put themselves in stressful situation, and sometimes personality usually plays a role in it. Like people who are type A personality, the perfectionist, seems to always need to get something done, need to keep busy,
Mhm, mhm.
and at times extremely over. And they're the type of people that will always be able to get things done. They're the A students. They're the ones that, we always think they have it all together, but there is a ton amount of stress with, and part of it is just the desire to be perfect and get things done, which they're not acknowledging the overwhelming aspect that it brings to it. Also, some people like the challenge of the idea that, oh my God, I had this ton of things to do and I overcome it and I got it all done all at once. So I think the high functioning stress plays a role with personality and people liking the challenge, or people also liking not how much of their need to be successful or be liked or uh, be perfect at certain things. So without realizing that, you're overwhelming yourself and you're becoming more stressed. And to others, you're performing well, but are actually under a lot of stress.
Right, right.
Yeah, I would add, it just occurred to me. So one of the things I would say when it comes to habits is we didn't just, we didn't just sort of become stressed. I feel like a lot of things are in our environment, and also in a way, it's almost like we learn or programmed to be this way. Like I grew up with parents who are always worried about money. Their job drives them crazy, but they never really complain in terms of like, that's the source of my stress. I
Mm,
kind of saw it as like part of life. Like this is what we do, but we still manage because we still manage to do everything. You raise children, you take care of your family, and we're not talking like a job. This is like two, three, four jobs, and then you're able to do everything else. And so in a way, we learn these behaviors, and many of us get rewarded for being able to do so much, even though we stress and not complain and not showing that we all stress. So a lot of time we're able to sort of like hide it from our family, hide it from our friends, and we are somewhat celebrated. Like, look at her, she's doing all this, or look at him, you're able to do like two sports, two jobs. You still come home and help your family, and then you're doing all this stuff. You start a business, and people are like, check, this is my example of like success, right? And you have zero right to complain because you like, this is the life, right? And everyone is looking up at you. So imagine like getting that level of like accolade or even a badge where you are the example of like success, whether it's your family or job. So there's no way for someone to say, you know what, like you're gonna burn out or you stressed out. You need to like start reducing things, because they'll probably look at you like, you're crazy. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so that part is a little difficult, particularly when you add the cultural aspect to it, where I'm like, I'm sure some people are like, I don't even know what stress is because it's part of life. And so it's almost like a foreign concept to up in terms of like the ability to even open your mouth and say, I'm stressed, right? How dare you? When you think of, especially like the younger generation, what all parents and grandparents have gone through. And
Yeah.
now for you to have a job going to one school and you stress, I, I can imagine the reaction from like some older folks, what they would say for us to even have the audacity to say, you know what, I'm a little stressed out. I need a break. So that makes it a little more challenging.
Yeah. So the positive stress. So a lot of times, people will get themselves involved in all kind of activities, projects, just to avoid what's going on at home, or kind of feelings they might be experiencing. There's nothing greater than other people saying, praising you, good job, like this is done. No one else could do it, and before you know it, you're getting yourself more and more into it because that's what you're used to. And people do get certain jobs where I think for a long time I said to myself, if I don't have three cell phones, it's not good. So because I was so used to it for a very long time, I have the on-call phone, I have the work phone, and so on and so forth. But that's a lot of stress that is putting on you. And for what? You could show up the next day, you do something wrong, and you're out. So, positive stress, I think a lot of, with everything else, we have to find a way to measure it and learn when to stop, when to say no, when to identify if you're stressed and what is it that you do about it.
Yeah, I'm loving these points. I know for me personally, I feel like sometimes in the Haitian community or in any like minority community, there's almost an expectation to put yourself in a stressful situation, because the more you compile on your lifestyle, like the better you'll be. But my question is, do you think that differs from like being in more of like an Americanized family than a Haitian family? Like, is that expectation different when you see that in like a white family or a family that has grown up in the United States?
I'll go first. I think absolutely yes. At least in the Haitian community where I grew up, the man was supposed to be the breadwinner. The woman, just whatever the job description is, you do everything to keep it going. And when I came here when I was 14, that was the same message I was getting from my community. It's like, well, you both going to work at 8, but you still have to get up, make his breakfast, make lunch, and everything else. And those are good stress because you're taking care of your partner, you're taking care of the person next to you. At some point, I think when I was feeling more accomplished in my life is when I was pregnant, newly married, going to grad school, working full time. That's a lot. But in the Haitian community, to me, it's like, you're doing so great. Your parents should be so proud of you.
Yeah.
Nobody's pulling you aside to say, you are doing too much. You need to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
You need to stop. You need to prioritize. You need to organize things. And I'm, like I was saying, I got so used to people telling me how great I was doing. I get to a point I don't know what it's like to say, I'm going to take the afternoon off and just relax. I'm going to do me time. Like, me time is not even a thing in our community. I feel like I don't know about other people. And if you say you're stressed, it shows as a sign of weakness, whether it's male or female. Like, what do you mean you're stressed? What do you mean you need a mental health day? So some of those things, because of the work that we do, we learn to use those terms. But I learned to use those terms. I learned to say no. I learned to walk away. I learned to say I need help. But I feel like in my community, like a lot of those things are not things that we openly talk about or say. Even as a Christian in the church, it's like, well, if you stress, your faith should help you. Yes, but there's other action that one must take for you to get better or to alleviate the stress.
And where do you think that comes from? Like not taking a break, not saying, I'm saying that I'm not okay. I'm saying that I do need a break. Is that pertaining to like any like historical, time? Like, where does that come from?
I don't know if someone else want to answer, but I think it
Yeah.
comes from way back then. Um,
I know. I think,
yeah, no, go
I
ahead.
think we're
yeah, I think we can go as far as slavery,
Mhm.
I would say.
yeah, and I think we're just
Um,
a natural. We're just a natural, resilient community. It's just in us to be strong, to be because that's what we see around our family, with who raised us. We just see that no matter trauma they face or life stressors they say. When we look at even our country right now in Haiti, like whatever political situation they're in, there is like this strong pride and resilient and the drive to keep going. So I think that kind of comes or with us, that we're just resilient. And then we also grow up in resilient and strong household, and our parents have been the same thing. So generational, we just kind of have it in us. So we don't know any different, but to kind of man up and cope in a sense, which is unfortunate. But I think it's just driven in who we are as a community. That's all we know. I mean, I do see generational. I can say with millennials. It is starting to be a change, which is great. I do see some of my friends like, you know what, I'm going to take a mental health day. I'm going to the beach. So there is us, I think the generation with us, the millennials, trying to break that concept. But I think it's just within us as a culture, because that's what we're raised with. That's what we see. And we don't know any different unless we break the pattern.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think a lot of the things, as you can see now, they're not new. What we're experiencing, whether they're publicly or privately, and it's great that we can say culture is part of it, but I would also say very similar to African American women or women of color as a whole. I feel like we do have this Superwoman syndrome that's always been there in terms of like whether we're working out in the field, whether in the home, this idea of being treated as if, we can't say no, like we able to do everything. And at some point, this was great, but then you're adding on other responsibilities, you adding other stressors in our environment. So even women who may have had the luxury of not working, um, so for us, it's like we always had to work. And so after you work, you still have another shift at home. And also the idea, there's a stigma of also asking for help. Like I don't even know in any language how I would ask that question. And it's something that's very uncomfortable because you should be able to do it all. And whatever you're feeling, whether you can't do it or not, you do it quietly, do it silently, do it in your prayers, say it to your friends, but you can never publicly say, you know what, just like for today, like I've had enough. And many people have said that. Many people have said, I'm tired, I'm sick. And even when you're sick, you can't even be sick because you still have other people to take care of. And so, in a way, I feel like culturally, we are literally being programmed to take care of other people, take care of our country, take care of everything else but us. And I've seen people, even on their deathbed, will feel like a burden and not wanting other people to sort of like take the time and care for them. So for me, the ability to accept somebody caring for me, somebody offering help, and being able to ask for help and not feeling weak, it's gonna take, I don't know what exactly, like some kind of training or reprogramming of my brain for me to be like, you are human, you can ask for help, you're not less Haitian, you're not less, American or less human because you cannot continue to do it all. Like we've done it all. Like that's the one thing too. We have to take credit and say we've done it all since the beginning of time. But it's okay. It's okay not to do everything, including like what we plan to do today. So if you didn't get it done, you're still a good person. And so tomorrow you can do less. But I think it's that idea knowing like, whether it's our mother or grandparents or even beforehand, like we've been working, as we know where we come from. So we know we've always been working. Even as children, some of us know like labor is literally in our blood. And so the idea of sitting down, taking a breath, I don't know, we're going to have to make that as part of the new cultural norm in this era.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, even for myself, I know I have so many issues. I'm even stressed about thinking about it, asking for help within the workplace because I don't want to seem incompetent, especially because of the color of my skin. And I know like the preconceived notions that people may have of me just solely because of the color of my skin. I don't want, I guess, to put fire onto an already burning flame. Yeah, so great point. I have a question. Hopefully that will help me better understand the stresses that you all may face. Could you each give like a quick summary of, like a typical day in your workspaces, and then maybe some examples of how you on a day-to-day basis ask for help, if any?
I think that's a good one. So, like I said, I'm the founder of Sylvan Counseling Services. So, for the past 5 years, I was working full time, trying to put my practice together. So, when we're talking about stress, I know exactly what it is, and some of the steps to take to alleviate stress. So, for the past 5 years, I was running my practice, working. So in May of this year, I stopped working for an agency. So just seeing clients, and right now with therapy being done virtually, I really thought things was going to be easier. You just wake up and you get started. Actually, I feel like it's harder because we adding to the stress we're talking about. So now you don't have the space of driving somewhere to where you have that me time, or stop by Dunkin' Donut, pick up that coffee. So everything is just being done in one place. So my typical day starts at about 7 a.m. and ends about 9 p.m.
Wow.
But life is all about learning. Yes, we are resilient, but we are a new generation. We can do better. So sometimes you put that amount of stress on you, knowing it's for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever. But over the years, I've learned, this is the time I'm going to take off. This is what I'm going to do, and I've learned to ask for help. Sometimes you feel like the person who's in the house with you should know better. He or she should know to help you out. Well, maybe he's not picking up on that. So I've learned to ask for help, whatever it is, if it's dropping off the kids or please make me a quick sandwich. Learn to ask for help and learn to say no. There are times you just have to say no, and without having to explain yourself, because you already know how tired you are. You already know how much you've done for the day, and just learn to say no in a very respectful way, and keep it moving. So I feel like I can't even describe my day right now because I am in that transitioning period.
So for me, it's kind of the same thing. Like my day doesn't look like how it like the same every day. So I work for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and some days I am um, doing virtual meetings with. Some days I have to attend court. Some days I have to meet with school providers. So it all depends. Especially with stress, you kind of have to balance the amount of caseload you have, knowing each of these close caseloads specifically, each needs of these clients specifically. So that adds on stress. Like part of it is kind of like paying attention to even every detail that is needed to do the job. So for me right now, my day can fluctuate. It can usually it's a 8:45 to 5, but I can be stuck till 7 o'clock. I can get a email late asking for uh, assessment or report to present in court tomorrow. So it varies, and with COVID, it even varies even more. So, but for me, how I manage stress, I'm not the best with stress management. I think I can do much better with it. But what I like to do is simply just when I'm at my ends, just kind of put on like a show that I like, or ask for help, or just kind of vent the feelings that I'm feeling is what helps me like kind of dictate describe the level of stress that I'm feeling, helps me kind of hear myself rationalize what I'm telling someone else helps me hear myself too. Like, oh wait, that's really where you're at. So if you're able to tell someone that's where you're at, then maybe you should. So I would say that has been helpful for me. Putting up, asking for help, taking a step back, and watching a favorite TV show, taking a self care day has been helpful for me.
Yeah, I think I would say the same with I try not if I think about my day, I think when I do things like this or when people ask me question, I don't really fully get the depth of the amount that I get done in one day until somebody asks and I'm going through the list and I'm just like, oh my God. But it's good to think about it. I mean, I think a regular day I have to think about like my role. So I have a job along running a business as a wellness coach. I'm also a mom and I'm also a full-time student as a doctoral candidate, earning probably not my final degree, but so all that in one plate and then everything else, like other community projects, other groups that I'm part of. And so I don't really think about, I literally, I think I work 7 days a week. Especially now, I don't think the pandemic really helped the situation because we're virtual. I find myself working more. So my hours are extended. My phone is always ringing. I'm still doing everything on Sunday. Um, and then you have like back to school, whether you were homeschooling or not. And so it's like literally you're not like wearing a hat, you're wearing all the hats at the same time. And that's always been the challenge and the burden of being, a Caribbean woman. And so for me, it's being able to sort of seeing it for what it is. It's not just asking for help, it's almost like structuring my day. Um, and it's not just relying on other people. It's almost like I'm training myself to do things differently, but I also have to train other people, not just saying, can you help me? Because that in itself, those around us, I don't even think they know. Sometimes we'll say it, oh, pick up the kid or do the groceries. And it's almost like you're speaking a foreign language and that person is right there. And technically you share the same responsibilities. But I think it's the ability to sort of like set up those structures, for lack of a better word, whoever is your partner, your family members, to be able to now you creating that village or that tribe that you need around you where you comfortably, literally you're delegating, where you delegate for work. So if grandma can like watch the kid, if that person can do the groceries and not feel guilty that you're literally asking different people, or if you have the luxury of being able to pay for these help, to be able to accept it. Like I know some women who have difficulty allowing someone to clean their house. And I can say this is like a very cultural thing where it's like leave the house and let somebody else take care of it, whether you know them or not know them, if you can afford to do it. So for me, it's been about more managing stress is more about setting up my daily routine, sort of like my morning, my afternoon and evening, where now I'm doing sort of like 10 minutes, very short, nothing crazy, sort of like meditation. I know some people pray, some people, for me, meditation has been great where it's literally, it's set, it is scheduled. So I wake up, I don't get off my bed without doing the 10-minute, just quiet. It doesn't even have to be anything major because I have the tendency, I can just leap out of bed. Like it could be 6:30 and then you're like, oh my God, school and this and that. And you just start running. But I think waking up slowly and really taking time to like be still and not be uncomfortable first thing in the morning, but also at night, the ability to sort of like, I write, I'm a poet. And so I'll take the time to literally, whether it's like doing the list or writing in a journal, but also the things that I'm grateful for, take the weight off of the things that's stressing me out. So whether it's the job, whether it's the money, whether it's the kids are not always like blessing all the time. Like everybody's like, oh, kids are great. But that's another source of stress because you're worrying about all these things. But I feel like writing them down and also just having one or two things that I'm going to do tomorrow before going to sleep, sort of like ease that worry, because it's done. But for me, the ability to sort of like that quiet time, but remembering what I'm grateful for right now, in spite of the things that are driving me crazy, but like there has to be something each day where at least that will calm the nerves for that day until like the next day.
I love that. Yeah, especially being still in the morning, being still in the evening, right before you go to bed. Those are some great points. And then delegating tasks. to a team of people, yeah, that's very, very great. Unfortunately, I don't have a team of people, but yeah, no, I can definitely take that in. One thing that I thought about going back to, I guess, the times that we're living in today, almost completely forgot because I mean, I still, go to work on a day-to-day basis, but I think there's like a notion of, or people have an idea of kids, not having stressors or kids not being stressed. How would you advise, a 4-year-old or someone in their preteens? How do you think they should respond to stress? What are things that, kids can implement in order to alleviate some of the stresses in their lives?
Okay. I was just going to add quickly
Oh,
from what was said before.
of course.
One of the things to relieve stress, I find that is helpful. You want to spend time with people who care about you, who love you, won't put you down. So people you really enjoy being around. Make time for yourself, like you were saying, Marie. And at the end of the day, you do want to wrap up the day. You want to end the day. So that's would be leaving the computer in the living room, putting the cell phone on vibrate or silent. So those are some of the things that you can do. So you are kind of separating the day, and do some activities that way you don't have to be in charge. And I'm glad that you're transitioning it to the kids, because that's where it comes. It becomes very, very important. So the kids can do a lot. So their time, if your kid is old enough, you can sit down and let them make you a sandwich. You can sit down and let them serve you. You can let them do your hair, let them play with your nails. It doesn't have to be perfect, but those are some of the things, as clinicians, we're telling other people, and a lot of times we don't practice it at home. So those are very, very important. One of the things I do in my family, and I've shared it with clients and friends, allow them the space to talk to you. So at least, once a week, you want to create that space where the kids can sit down and talk to you, express their emotions. You have so much going on in the news right now, and they're watching it. They don't always understand what's really going on, but this would be the time for them to ask questions. So what I do with my kids, we have the space, we talk about things, we talk about what they're grateful for, what they are not happy about. And believe it or not, there's so many times in the week where we piss them off, we don't even know it. But if at least once a week you open the space for them to be able to talk about those emotions without getting upset, without you getting upset or without them getting into trouble. I find that very important. So especially right now, a lot of our kids are doing school at home, not because they want to, not because they love their computers so much, because they have no choice. There are schools, whether it's college or elementary school, very last minute, they're like, well, we can't have the kids. So now they're stuck at home with you. So allowing them the space to talk to you, allow them to be in charge sometimes, and let them see that mom and dad are not always so happy. They can be part of the conversation. If they see you upset, one of my son actually does that faithfully. Just being able to say, Dad, you should say sorry to her. Mom, you're wrong. And from our culture, I don't know about you guys, but I don't remember seeing much of that at home. Just being able to open it up like that for them, I find it very useful, and they feel like they have a voice. They feel like they're part of the family. They feel like what they're seeing on TV, it's not just movie, but it's reality, because you are giving them the space to talk to you about it. And I would encourage the parents who are listening now, don't let your kids go. Not that the teachers are not important, not that the social workers are not important, but you want to be the one to explain certain things to your kids the way you want them to understand it, the way it makes sense for your family, the values that you have, you want them to be able to take it on like that. So just having that space, talking to them and asking them questions and allow them to talk to you freely, I find to be extremely important. And I would encourage anyone who's listening tonight to try those things with your kids.
Great points. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
and I think in a way we sort of like doing, even though we weren't raised that way, I feel like in a way we almost like, it's a strange thing where almost like you reparenting yourself, but you also parenting very differently in spite of how you were raised, in terms of like, I wish my mom or dad would listen to me, or an aunt or whoever. But literally culturally, it's like children are not allowed to do that. Like recently I heard of a term called emotional literacy, where the ability to show your kid how to like share how they're feeling, like whether boy or girl, to be able to say, I feel angry because I feel this, and letting them share that. Now, culturally, again, we are not the most vulnerable, we don't we don't express our vulnerabilities openly. And so that's going to be a little challenge in terms of all self being able to model that. What does that look like? And for me to be able to do it, even though I didn't grow up with it. So if I'm having a bad day, I would say I'm having a bad day and I need 10 minutes. And the ability to also give them time to themselves. So I'm not one of those where it's like you have a chores every 5 minutes. So like you can sit down if you just want to read, you can play games or watch TV. Like I don't fill the schedule up where they're like doing all this kind of stuff and then they're holding all this stuff in. The other part is also, we don't have to have all the answers. So that's the beauty sometimes of having people around us who support us, but also someone outside of us where our kids might be comfortable saying something to, but we all part of that village where they'll let you know how they're expressing themselves. So I know, they will say something to you, but they won't say it to me. But if you like the aunt, the cousin, the grandmother, like we all in communication, like you say, Marie mentioned this or Jean mentioned that, and then we'll be able to discuss it. At least I know like he or she has someplace to go and share that, because that's the other thing we have too, where we're holding so much in that we may have a girlfriend or somebody where we say, but I don't know if we truly have an outlet to really say how we feeling. And that's really important even for children, to teach them how to do that early on, but also to do activities where you can start talking about things without saying, let's have the talk. Today we're going to talk about this. So one of the things I tend to do is like, we'll have game nights, or I got into gardening over this pandemic. So sometimes it'll be like, while you're planting some seeds or you're doing some things, and a conversation will come up that has nothing to do with what you're doing, which is the best teachable moment ever. Because then you can be like, oh, what do you do if your friend do this? That's cool. Or what do you do if you feel like, you're having a bad day? Or even I think someone mentioned earlier about feeling lonely and you have all these people in the house. Like, what would you say if you're not feeling, if you're angry? Like, what would you say, right? I remember I recently asked my son and I'm like, do you use curse word? Like, what curse word do you use? And I know a lot of time it's like, oh, that's so rude. This is not etiquette. But you need to be able to express, those things. So, but I think being willing to teach them that, even though we weren't taught that, is so important, because they're also holding a lot of things in that's happening in our culture, but also maybe happening in our own home. So knowing they can come to you for will, like no judgment, they can come and say, I'm feeling this way, or this happened in school. And you will be able to soothe them and not judge them for whatever may have happened is so important.
Awesome. Oh my God, great points. I follow-up question. So I think we're talking a lot about what to do to alleviate stress, but looking from the outside in, if someone comes to you and shows sign of stress of any sort, or flat out just verbally tells you, I'm stressed, here's why, how would you, again, from the outside looking in, and respond or aid that person? Are there any like pinpoints that you try to hit that may aid in someone who is feeling stressed, may go through like long-term moments of stress, someone who is constantly in environments that are stressful? What can you do, I guess, as an ally?
Sorry. So there are a number of things. So it depends. I think we talk about the 3 different types of stress: the physical, emotional, and psychological stress. So there's always you want to make sure that they check in with their primary care if they, saying they're dizzy or they have headaches, stomach complications. So they always, you want to make sure the person check in with their primary care. That's like what to start. As a clinician, I would know what to do. As a friend, as a clinician, I will encourage them to get services and connect with somebody. By the way, right now, most of the insurance companies are covering the copay. So as a clinician, I would encourage somebody to use that time. If money was like an issue, so you can see your clinician without worrying about the $25 or $30 copay. As a friend, so the level of stress we're talking about, we are all so busy. And I hear this all the time in my session. I'm having a hard time. I'm feeling lonely. But when I call so and so, they just send me the message, I'll call you back, right? And it's like 3 days later, the person doesn't get a call back, or the person really wants to talk to you and they can only find you via text. So we don't have time. So, we have right now, I'm saying to myself and, other people who are listening is try to create time for the people who call us friend or who call us sister or whatever. We want to, create time for them. If the person call, you can, if you're in a session or you're in the middle of something, it's okay to say I'll call back, but make sure you call back. Sometimes they don't want to call a mobile crisis. Sometimes the person doesn't want to call the clinician, but they want to call a family member. They think that, or they feel like you know enough to lead them in the right direction. Sometimes it's not a therapist who's going to tell the person, take a bath, lit some candles and have dinner. They want to hear it from you or I. So it's very important during this time. Not only like we're checking on other people, we're checking on each other, but if the person call you, they send you a text saying, I want to talk, I want to check in, that we actually follow up. And that's really for you and I. It's very important for us to think about those things and see if you take 15 minutes out of your family time or out of your time, will it help someone else or will it like change your whole agenda for the day? I think that's something we can be mindful of and just be there for each other in a friendship level.
I think acknowledging the fact that the person said their stress is one point too. Saying that, I appreciate you coming forward, saying that you're stressed. And normalizing the stress
Yeah,
they're
definitely.
feeling. Because sometimes people might feel like, the stress that they're feeling, they've only experienced this level of stress. Like normalizing that, even though I haven't experienced the stress that you are experienced, that it's okay to be stressed. That's just our human behavior response to that in a sense. So that's what I would do with helping someone else's stress, normalizing the stress level that they're experiencing. Um, Acknowledge that they reached out and said that they need help, and then provide the space for them to feel vulnerable to report the level of stress or feelings that they're experiencing, because sometimes someone can tell you they're feeling stressed but they don't tell you the intents of the stress. So creating
Yeah.
that space where the person can be able to be like, I'm stressed, but this is the level of stress I'm experiencing. This is where I'm at. And I think one thing we that can be helpful, having the person give a number to the stress level. Like, are you at a 10 where you're extremely stressed, or are you at a 1? And that can give you a sense of where that person is and be able to kind of provide more support in that sense. I think that's helpful too.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think those are great. I mean, for me, I always go straight to, as a coach, I'm always listening to people first. And so for me, it's just letting them share whatever happened that day or asking questions. Because sometimes people are not going to come out and just say it. I mean, it's rare for somebody to come to me and say, I'm stressed. But, it's almost like you have to almost like be decoding and reading between the lines in terms of like their facial expressions, or if it's someone you know based on how they usually are. If it's like a bubbly person and all of a sudden they're like super quiet, or when you call them they don't answer the phone, or so sometimes it's the reverse versus getting that message and saying call me where you don't hear anything, right? So don't wait until like they reach out. So even before the pandemic, it's sort of like intentionally reaching out to people and asking like mindful questions. But if someone were to come and say something, it's like whatever they're saying, like you both mentioned early, it's like validating it. And I believe whatever they say, they have the right to feel however they're feeling, regardless of the situation. So whoever is in front of me, that's the priority. Their feelings is valid. They don't even need to explain to me why they're feeling how they're feeling sometimes. And so it's just like letting them sort of like get this off their chest. And sometimes they don't need solutions where it's like, call here, do this. It's just that you hear and you care and you can show that. And then other time it's just thinking about what's within our community. Like for me, I literally realized, just like any relationships that you might be in, where it's like one person cannot fit all that need. You may have a girlfriend who listens to all your trouble, and then you have another one, you can only talk to her about the job. You can only talk to her about your hobbies. You can only do whatever. So it's okay to sort of have those needs met that way. So for me now, it's like I have somebody for like different things. And so finding communities where you can go, like peer support group or groups that are set up solely where you can kind of like build community and you can talk about those things, write about those things. So for me, I literally have to intentionally look. So sometimes it's not going to just fall on your lap or someone is going to be like, go there. Because again, they think we got it all together. So of course, you don't need help because you have it all figured out. So there are groups out there. So one of the groups I'm part of, it's called Dare to Be Different. And so we're always holding healing circles where you come together and like you're literally learning from each other and learning about those things you're dealing with. Because sometimes, like I said, we saying stress, sometimes we have no name for what that thing is until you hear somebody else say, this happened to me and I feel this way. And then you kind of feel like, okay, I'm safe, which is the other thing too. Does that person feel safe and trust you enough to kind of say really like how they're feeling? And so I think cultivating that and based on how you're treating them, you would hope like if there's something bigger than just like, I had a bad day or I need to vent, because sometimes they need more than just like venting, that you'll be able to sort of guide them and say, hey, I go to this. That's the other thing too for me, is like letting people know that I may look like I have it all together, but I go to this, or I go to this group, or I talk to this person about that. And I feel like sometimes that's, we kind of giving other people permission to be vulnerable, or even therapy. I know we have a lot of social workers and counselors, within our community and within HAMA, is sort of like you sharing that I'm going to therapy, I'm going to this group. Then the person is like, oh, this is not weird at all. So if this is happening to me, I can do that too. Like, what do you do? So I think being open and sharing that. And again, I know culturally we are not the most open people, because in my head, I'm already thinking like, oh, you're sharing your dirty laundry. But I think there's a way to do it without putting everything necessarily out there, but knowing based on who we are that you are asking for help, or your children, the way you're doing certain things. I feel like, just being willing to sort of be a little more vulnerable and letting people know, the people coming to you, that you also might be dealing with this. So that's the other thing where it's like they can share it because they know you're fully human and you go through those things, that you don't figure it out all by yourself.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. One thing I love that you mentioned was the importance of building a community. Unfortunately, I do feel like it's a little difficult, and I could be wrong. I do feel like it's a little difficult, especially in the time that we're in now, to build that community. So how would you suggest someone build and foster that community from a virtual standpoint? And this question is for anyone.
I think if it's, I don't know if I'm getting it right, but I think Maurice said you have different friends or different people you go to for different things. Is that what the part you're asking?
No, I'm saying, so because of COVID, a lot of people are mainly indoors. Not everyone, but a large group, a large population of people are indoors. So, people, rely on internet, or I know I'm not too fond of, or I don't know too much about like Xbox or something, but people like spend their time on video games. Like, how can someone utilize their spaces indoors to create a community of people?
Okay, okay. I was thinking of it pre-COVID.
Oh, no, 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 no.
No, right now there's still some support group being done virtually. In a lot of the churches are actually meeting via Zoom, or they have other like phone line, conference line they use. So I think people can still communicate, connect that way. Even my church, like right now, we've done like wake service, wedding. So there's still a way to connect with other people. We just have to be creative about it, and also just because we're not able to see people physically, if you have like a phone number, you can reach out to people you haven't talked to in a while, or the people who are your friends. You can find ways to stay connected. I've heard of so many people doing like Zoom birthday parties, or playing, still have that game night type of thing with friends, and they still manage to get it all together and still stay connected. So I think it's how creative we can get. We just have to keep on pushing ourselves. So that way we're not just, you're not just in your house all by yourself, but you are finding ways to stay connected with other people.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think again, for me, it would be encouraging and inviting our community to be more open and for us to really sort of like share the tools that other communities are using. So for me, I feel like I have done everything, whether it's Zoom and people who may be more comfortable, let's say using WhatsApp, for example, where they have this thread going or group going and they do it on WhatsApp. But within Zoom, most of the healing circles that I go to on a weekly basis, it's all on Zoom. And I think if you don't have a computer, don't want to be on a computer, you can still be listening by phone. And I find that a lot of people, sometimes they're participating. Like I see attendance in church like completely increase because you have people with limited mobility, people who live far away. And at that point, it's not just a local event. Like anyone from other places, other states can participate in those activities as well. So I think it's just either perhaps more education, more outreach, and people being more open. And because I think we downplay that we can build community virtually, like because it's so different and depending on generation and age, and if people are just be willing to like try it, because I think sometimes we say, oh, it's going to be different than face to face, whereas I feel like a lot of people weren't taking advantage of face to face activities anyway. And so now it's even worse because you not having interaction, you're not going out as often. So, and some people are great at making it very engaging, where you can have discussion, you can have group discussion, you can do sort of like in between those big meetings. So I think we may have to do a lot of teaching and showing how can we do the same way, and just I feel like just embracing the reality that we in. I think a lot of people are calling it new normal, but it's just a way for us to sort of, this is what we in right now. So this idea of going back and like, okay, we're going to get back to our groups, we're going to get to do things. And I feel like we still have to live, we still have to have human experience. Therefore, these are the tools we have, and we have the tools and we have people doing things. And so take advantage of them if you're truly willing to transform and de-stress and do other things during this time, because I feel like it's all available. It's just a question of like, are you looking, or is it, so that's the other thing where I feel like people say they don't, and I'm like, I'm telling you, 7 days a week I can find something to do. Like there's an event, and money is not even an issue. A lot of people know how hard it is, that the situation we're in, and I know a lot of people, whether it's coaches, counselors, even therapists, have cut down on their prices because they know the people who are suffering the most may not be able to afford their services. Therefore, they're willing to do more sliding scale or even offer like a one-time thing where you can come and learn about what they have to do. But if you're looking and this is something you really want to do, I feel like the opportunities and programs and groups are out there, and the people, because even within our communities, like we are doing the work in terms of being available to our community and our people and teaching and be supportive. Like we don't even need to know people, right? So if we know they have a need, we'll find a way. Like if we're not the one with that skill or with that service, we know people who can be able to help them figure that out. So just asking people, be willing to reach out and ask for help if they need it.
Mm-hmm. Great. Does anyone else have anything else to add? No? Okay.
I
I'm a
was just
piece
gonna
for
add that.
fostering the.
Oh,
Sorry, I was
okay.
saying in terms of fostering the community during this time, I think one of the ways we could do that is just being understanding of the time that we have right now with the situation that's going on with COVID, and being able to provide people the safe space to acknowledge the stress levels and the resources that we as like professionals have, just sharing it at different platforms that we have, whether if it's on our Facebook or our Instagram, like this is what I know, this is the information I have. And that gets the conversation going. Like if you share something about what's happening in a city, the person might not know and be like, oh, thank you for sharing that. And then person might share it, and then that develops a community. I think networking in that sense, networking not in terms of business, but networking in terms of services and support for people can also foster communities. It can help like people who are not usually the type to engage, take that information individually and then go about them like on their own and look it up. For me, I think that's helpful. Like since we're locked up, just anything you know about a PCP, a service provider, or anything, just sharing it on a platform, and that person can just go and look it up, and that fosters a community of more people seeking help, more people going out and looking for these services and resources.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I would add is similar to when we think of like social and fun stuff. Whenever I'm doing something, I don't assume like this person is not, let's say they don't have a need or they're not stressed. I always think of like, who can I invite? Who can benefit from this, right? And always have a plus one. So if I'm going to something, whether you said, oh, I need this, I'm always going to invite a girlfriend or friend or family member and say, hey, I'm going to this. Like I work out on Sunday with a person, like, hey, come on. It's on Zoom. You don't even have to leave the house. Or the other thing I purposely do now, I do all my, even if I'm meeting you one-on-one, I have it be on Zoom, and I make it like really fun. So if it's something that's open to the public, bring somebody along, whether they have an issue or not, because that's the other thing too. We don't need to wait until the person say they're stressed out or they're going through something. So for me, it's also like preventative, because I think culturally we are so social where it's like people are always around. And so I don't remember things being so coordinated, where now I feel like you have to be invited. So I feel like bring people along as you go into different things, perhaps by being exposed to it. It's something they might be open to, and also encouraging them to do the same, right? So I invite you, invite somebody else who might benefit. And then it doesn't feel like some weird thing we're doing because we have some kind of issue, but it's sort of like, we go to hang out, to meet other people, and you do meet other people. Like in a pandemic, you can still meet new people. And it's just a nice respite, right? Because it's not a job, it's not a whatever, but it's a nice way to sort of like do something different and see how it goes versus, again, assuming. So if you know something, let people know. But I do agree, like social media is another one, but generationally that might be different. So that's why I even mentioned WhatsApp or even like a group chat. I mean, people do things socially. I think adding this piece to it might be sort of like the nice way, the way we do some other things. Like if you're going, nobody goes to the bar, to the club, to whatever by themselves. So if you're gonna do something like this that will benefit your mind and sort of like make your life of, higher quality, I always want to share that with somebody else, because I can't be the only one who wants like my life to be just a little less stressful than it is right now. So I would say it's always more fun together. So imagine being stressed less with your friends and family.
Great, great, great. I did want to circle back. So I know like COVID was partially mentioned as, one barrier per se that might, inhibit someone from reaching out to someone, or may affect someone's like stress levels. Aside from the cultural values and practices, are there any other barriers in particular that may impact the management of stress specifically within the Haitian community?
I mean, for me, so I think about just being Asian American immigrant in the workplace. There's a lot that comes with. There's a lot of barriers. A lot of times, you know, just because we're bilingual, I see that as the great thing, the greatest thing ever. But sometimes in the workplace, it's been seen as a weakness. Your English is not good enough. You this, you that. Just being able to advocate for yourself. So advocacy is not one of those things that we just have. I think it's something that we have to learn. So just being able to advocate for yourself. Um, you know, in some cases, I don't know if that ever happened to you. You get upset, you get frustrated. All of a sudden, you want to speak in your primary language, not a different language. So just being able to advocate for yourself, just the inequality that shows up at the workplace every single day is one of the barriers I feel like that causes a lot of stress. And a lot of times we don't say anything. You leave this job, you go to the next job, you put in the hours. Yet, you know, in the back of your mind, you know, well, it doesn't matter how many extra hours I put in, I will never be the one they first think of for the next promotion. And just being able to speak up. A lot of times, you know what you want to say. You have it in writing. You draft the email. You have it all, but yet you don't say it. So I think when it comes to barriers, that's one of the things that usually come to mind for me. Just not being able to speak up, and as a African American female, you try to say it, and you get called all kind of names that doesn't even describe who you are as a person and as a professional. So I feel like those stress, you know, they there, you choose not to say anything because you know what some of the consequences will be, or just, you know, the amount of work. I think somebody mentioned that you just keep on going, you don't say no because you feel like you would be complaining to some level, because you're supposed to have it together. We are so resilient, we're supposed to keep on going. So a lot of times we know the stress is there, we acknowledge it but not verbalizing it, and I feel like those are barriers that tends to get in the way for a lot of us.
And I think like generals, like the systematic racism that we just face as African Americans and as Blacks adds on to the stress. Like aside from cultural values and practices, you know, you might run into issues economically, um, in terms of education, like just the way like life is put for us as Black. Um, and Haitians, like that adds on to our stress. Like we're already at a disadvantage at time compared to other nations and even minorities as a whole. If we're speaking in general, like that down to separate from the cultural values and practices, we're going into our daily lives, our daily everyday schedules, facing these challenges, and they're just part of the system. They're just part of the practices that we experience. Like um, when you economically you're at a disadvantage compared to, so that's a stress level. We see a lot of our parents are working more than two jobs, three jobs, and that's not a cultural value or practices. It's just how we are stacked against the odds, and so we fall into like we're falling into that situation. So I think like unfortunately um, the systematic racism happening every day and around us right now puts the stress level of a lot of our communities because they're just at a disadvantage overall, with healthcare even. You know, you might go to the hospital. Our group of communities unlike is less likely to have health insurance, or even if they have health insurance, they don't know, they're not educated on some of the co-pays and resources that they can get in the hospital. Sometimes, you know, work in social work, in a hospital setting, you see, you know, your Haitian grandmother or someone who you can even identify, oh, that's someone that could be my grandmother, just struggling to navigate through things, getting, and that in itself is stressful because the person didn't just come for the person for medication or to be seen as a doctor by a doctor, but now there's other stressors that they figure out. Who am I gonna express these things to? Will they have an interpreter for me? And just I can think of different examples of just things that we face that adds on to our stress as being community. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's a lot, and I appreciate saying aside from cultural, because I think a lot of time there's some things we're dealing with that we blame ourselves for, right? We might say it's because we could do this or we could do that, and so I do know like probably jobs and worrying about finance and money is probably like the biggest stressors, and I would say probably after health, the number one thing killing people is their jobs in terms of the people you're around, not having a supportive managers or supervisors, or the work environment period might be stressful. And so sometimes some of us think like, oh, we thrive in like these high stress environment, but then it takes a toll on your health. And so I think it would be great to have spaces or jobs that do recognize, especially in this situation we're in right now. I mean, there is such a thing as racial trauma, where on top of dealing with what's going on in our culture as a whole, you dealing with certain things at work, you're dealing with certain things at home. And so these are systems that are in place that has nothing to do with individuals or families and being a professional. In spite of that, those are just like literally pre-existing systems in slavery that are still in place, and that we still have to exist and function and somehow thrive in those conditions that are there. And so it would be great, on top of talking about racial equality, to actually put some practices in place in terms of how do people cope in the workplace, not simply like lip service, but knowing certain employees are going through additional stressors than just like doing the job. So if things were put in place where you are encouraged to take a day off and not feel guilty, or like you're not doing your work, when those are the people who work the hardest and going above and beyond, or having a fear of losing your job. So right now I feel like people might be hesitant to sort of say, I'm going to take a day off, right? Because we see other people losing their job, other people being furloughed. So that fear in itself of like not being able to take care of your family, that's an additional stressor. But imagine if you didn't have to go beg for a day off, that it was simply offered, and it's part of the work culture, that people do take time, that they do recognize that you do have that stressor. I mean, people talk about family values and family first all the time. People don't make any accommodation for parents in the workplace. You still expect to show up, homeschool, or whatever is going on, and still deliver the report. Like very little has changed as far as I'm concerned in terms of the workplace because of COVID, because of the pandemic. People are still expected to perform the way they were performing before, when everything has changed from before. So I think for us is really sort of thinking about like not just changing us individually or family, but something has to happen system wise across the board. So it's not just like us trying to fix things, but like it's something that's going on. The cycle itself has to be sort of like reshaped, and for us to truly make a shift and value people being stressed less, as part of the norm.
Thank you so much for that. We are running a little close on time, so I'm just going to ask this final question, and it's also going to pull into your final thoughts, any thoughts that you may like to share with our virtual community. So I'm just going to ask, are there any, external resources that you know about that you would like to share with the Facebook and YouTube community in regards to stress? Stress management. But again, like any final remark that you would like to say as well is also greatly appreciated.
I thought one of you was going to add. The only thing I was add also, there are resources, don't look just in our communities, for example. I would say look, our communities is literally global, and especially now. So there are resources that may be outside of your neighborhood, outside of your immediate sort of like block. I would say just being open to looking for those. For me personally, I would recommend, so one community I'm part of is Dare to Be Different. And then I know Pure Spark has a lot of peer support group where you can participate in those openly. There's no cost, but I would say sort of just be on the lookout. I feel like HAMA is now the hub of that kind of information. So whatever needs people may have, not to be afraid to really reach out and take advantage of what's being offered. Because I think being educated and being more aware of what's available is a good start. And then the second one is just being willing to accept that help if it's available, and then to share it with others. If you don't need it, always think of somebody else who might benefit.
Definitely, definitely. Final remarks.
And I was going to say, your primary care should be your best friend. So that's a good place to start. And please do follow up on the recommendation they give you. So I did also mention the insurance companies, like a lot of them are waiving copay right now. So it's a good time if you need the support of a professional to reach out and get that support.
Thank you so much.
And even if your people struggle with finding resources, just coming up with strategies, daily coping strategies to help you manage stress is also fine. A list of things that you enjoy, a list of things that alleviate stress. Sometimes people overthink it and overthink it a bit about how to manage stress, and it's very simple. Anything that that calms you down and bring the adrenaline down, or the nervousness or the tightness of the muscle down, is a way to help. So I feel like in the moment, if you're not able to access any of those resources or call a PCP, just do things that you enjoy, or counting down. There's one thing, using the five senses helps you slow your mind, like thinking of something you see, something you can smell. So it's usually used for coping with anxiety, but it also slows your thoughts process down, and that can bring you back to a calm state too. So all those the five senses skill helps too.
Well, thank you so much all for your time this evening. All of your thoughts, your commentary was greatly appreciated. I learned a lot. I hope the same goes for you all too.
Yes.
Please, if you have any questions, I believe all your contact information should be on the direct HAMA page. And please just tell your friends, your community about tonight's panel. Please have them watch so they can learn more about stress and stress management. And I hope you all have a great evening. I'm just going to quickly pass it off to Brenda for the closing remarks.
Thank you, Christina.
Thanks for having us.
We can't hear you, Brenda.
You're muted.
Okay, there we go. Thank you so much to our speakers, Cleona, Marie, Sabrina, Christina, always coming through. I thank you so much, you guys. I too learned a lot. I learned resources. I was yesing on the resilience. Resiliency can be dangerous, right? Not making the me time, Superwoman Syndrome, all of this stuff, that we kind of just go through and we do, and we don't really take the time to talk about it and understand that it's great, but how it can really affect us. So thank you guys. For those of you who are watching, we are going to have this same conversation, but in the Haitian Creole language on Wednesday, in 2 days on the 16th, right? Wednesday, the 16th of September, same place, same time, 7 p.m. So if you enjoyed it, and if you feel like your parents, your grandparents, uncles, aunts, whomever need to hear this conversation, send them our way, share the link. It's going to be live on YouTube and Facebook. We're going to be doing it in the Haitian Creole language. We have another great list of panel speakers that will be joining us on Wednesday night to share their expertise about stress and help our community manage a little bit better. Like Christina said, the bios for all of these amazing speakers this evening and all of the ones we've had in the past 2 weeks are available on our website. You can go there and read up about them, myhamahealth.org. Also, it'll be there through the end of September throughout this entire series. So feel free to go onto our website and learn about these amazing women that have joined us this evening. I am happy to say that next week we're going to be talking about self-care. So we talked about trauma, depression, stress, and it's like we got pointers on how to deal with everything, but then we're going to wrap it up with self-care next week on Monday and Wednesday in the Haitian Creole language. So if you want to join us for another English session, our last session will be self-care next week on the 21st of September. I want to give a huge shout out to the NNLM, which is the Network of National Libraries of Medicine, who have supported this project since 2018. Through 2020, they have been so helpful in funding this project and allowing us to honestly meet our community where they are. Initially in 2018 and 2019, we were going into the community and meeting our Haitian folks face to face. And now with COVID, we're shifting it online, and it has been honestly amazing. So thank you to the NNLM, New England Region NER, for supporting this project. Last shout out or a plug is that along with providing this health information for our community, we also support our young Haitian American scholars in our community. We want to not only say go to school, but we also want to show them that we support their higher education. So each year we provide academic scholarships for our Haitian American communities. That information can be found on our website sometime between January, February of each year. We started off awarding high school students only, and as of 2020, we are starting to award college students as well. So people ask and we're delivering. So please tell your friends, family members to look out for our HAMA scholarships. But before you do that, tell them to join us next week for self-care so they could better take care of themselves a little bit more better, and find those routines that work for them. I cannot thank you guys enough again for this evening. It was an honor to have you, all you lovely ladies, and having Christina moderate us. I look forward to seeing you all next week. I can't really see you, but I'm sure you're there and you'll be with us next Monday for our talk on self-care. Everyone have a great evening. Thanks again for joining us. Take care.
Thank you.